I've got hoes in different area codes. How the hell did she make it slap so hard though?
Got a white boy on my roster. He be feeding me pasta and lobster. He just hit me up on Tuesday, like, what you doing, babe? Let me take you shopping.
Hi, buddies. Music is relative and full of context, so let's unpack area codes. So there's a lot that went into the building of the genre of hip hop. A bajillion tiny little things over a bajillion years led to this genre. But there's one moment, one significant thing, especially when it comes to rapping, that happened, and that is the concept of the breakbeat. The shortened story goes you have two record players and a crayon or a marker, and then this little fader that goes in between the volume of each record player. And disco sucks. But in a lot of disco songs, there's this part called the breakdown that kind of doesn't suck, and it's usually just a drum break with some simple bass. That's always, to me, always felt like the drummer's time to not be so bored because disco drum beats are boring. And so these DJs would take and mark that part of a record, that part of a song, and switch back in between two copies of the same part, keeping that part go on forever and ever. And this was the least musically complex. So it left a lot of area for association and attention on the lyrics. There are types of music where it kind of doesn't matter what the singer is singing about because the attention is more on the emotions and the melody and harmony. Hook by Blues Traveler is a really good example of a songwriter taking advantage of and exploiting this part of the musical genre of pop music. And so a lot of bangers in hip hop have less musicality, really meaning less melody and less harmony. And we get a lot of our emotional context from harmony. So there has to be other ways in which we get that emotional context. So that's why the beat is really important. And this specifically, this style of hip hop that's so lyric heavy. And so the way that they were able to get the emotional root motives across wasn't through chords, but a beat that feels very lurky and kind of predatory, and yet laid back because the main snare part is snaps. And so the other thing that it leaves room for is effects, and we can get emotional context from effects like the reverb on her voice. A reverb that would have been lost in context if there was a lot of things happening. If there were, I mean, there's no chords in this, there's only one single note in the whole song. So we get this emotional context of someone rapping in a large empty room. The other context that we can get from reverb is very ancient. We started off doing these things in caves and then sort of built our own caves and cathedrals. But it can either be a person speaking alone in a large cave-like room, or a person speaking and there's not a sound, everyone is paying attention to them. So when we're hearing almost no music, just a simple lurking beat, and then the lyrics that have that reverb on, and no other distracting sounds, we're kind of forced to hone in on what the person is saying. Because in our mind, soul brain, the context is that this is a very important person, like a teacher or a preacher. And so all of these things lead us as the listener to pay the fuck attention, almost in a trance-like way. And listen, I've heard plenty of music that follows all these rules and then fall off at the last part. And this is why she hit it out of the park. And that's the cadence. The cadence and the message. The cadence is what kept me listening. And I think is why this song is trending. It's trending with people trying and mostly failing to attempt that cadence. Something that clearly requires a lot of skill, attention, and practice. Humans kind of dig that shit when we see it in other people. And the message is complex. The message is empowering, but it's kind of side-eyeing and winking at the same time. And while it sounds nothing like it, it shares a lot of elements with a song called I Put a Spell on You, especially the use of cadence, rhythm, and reverb to draw in the person, and the use of a minor third and a root, which is actually happening in this song. There's only one root note, but her cadence is going between the root and the minor third, which is where that darkness came from. If her tone went up just a half a semitone, it would sound a lot more, probably sound weird, but it'd sound a lot more like joyful. Instead, there's this rawness. That technique, by the way, the root and the minor third, is used in a lot of indigenous music, especially a lot of war and battle and celebration music. There we go. We unpacked it a little bit. Feel free to keep unpacking with me in the comments. If you want to go deeper in conversation with me, Dandy Chat is a $10 tier on my Patreon, and we do all that through Discord, and we go deeper on this kind of stuff. Hope you have a badass day, and I love you. Actually, real quick before I go, we're doing a free sort of open house thing on our Discord, and you can go to the link in the bio, or there's a link in the description or in the comments, depending on where you're watching this. We're doing free workshops and song therapy and discussions. Love you.